Alright, so some advice for anyone advocating for a $15 minimum wage. Be careful of what you wish for, because if you get a $15 minimum wage, you would better prepare yourself to act the part, step your game up, and be an employee worth $15 an hour, especially when that $15 an hour wage puts a lot of pressure, uncertainty, and financial strain on your employer. Because apparently some former workers in New York City are shocked that they're being fired after winning these battles for a $15 minimum wage. Some have been fired because the employer can't afford it, and some employers are just becoming far more strict in what would constitute a firing, because if they're going to be forced to pay $15 an hour, the flip side to that coin is that the employer is then entitled to that level of work, $15 an hour worth of work. But like I said, some employers had to let people go or cut their hours. This should shock no one. Small to medium-sized businesses will have the squeeze put on them severely, to the point where they actually might not be able to continue having employees at all, at worst, and at best they might not be able to continue employing as many people as they do now, and will have to let people go. It's really very simple. If you substantially increase the cost of a business's liabilities, the likelihood that they go under increases as well. Take this employer from New York, for example, the owner of Lagmit's Paper and Plastic Company. In this article they wrote, they said they could no longer keep as many employees on the payroll. They could not afford it. So they had to let 6 people go. That's a good reminder of what the real minimum wage always is, which is 0. And if you try and interfere this much, you can cause massive problems for both the employer and the employees. This employer continued by saying that his payroll doubled, going from around $300,000 a year to about $600,000 a year. This is where people's understanding of the implications of a higher minimum wage seem to go out the window. They want to picket for a $5 increase in the minimum wage, and they think to themselves, or rather they very often say, all we're asking for is $5 an hour more. The problem with this is they're not understanding simple multiplication. Let's say you have 10 employees. Each employee works on average 40 hours a week for 52 weeks a year, and they all make $10 an hour. You have to multiply the 10 employees by the $10 an hour, by the 40 hours a week, by the 52 weeks a year. This gets you about $208,000 a year that the employer is spending on wages. Now, what if you start protesting for a $15 an hour minimum wage? After all, it's only an increase of $5 an hour, something that any decent employer should be willing to do. Well, here's the problem. It's simple multiplication. Take the same example I just gave, but increase the $10 an hour to $15 an hour. 10 employees making $15 an hour now, working 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. That brings you up to $312,000 annually that the employer is now spending on wages. That is a cost increase of $104,000 a year coming from just a $5 an hour increase. That is by no means insignificant. That can easily erode any and all profits and grind a business into dust. And then you will be making the real minimum wage, which, as I said before, is $0 an hour. And you certainly will be making $0 an hour if you, as an employee, get that wage increase, yet remain the same quality of employee. I know if I was an employer and if my employees pulled the government gun on me and forced me to pay them $15 an hour, I would say, okay, look, if I can even keep this business going now, and if I can even keep you all on the payroll, there can be no more mistakes, no more showing up late, no more messing up an order, no nothing. You got what you wanted, and I'll be hauled off to jail if I don't pay you $15 an hour, so now there are some new rules that are a bit more strict. You make one mistake, and you're gone. Employers can literally no longer afford to employ anyone who needs even the slightest bit of hand-holding. So to those employees wanting these minimum wage increases, you just can't have it both ways. You cannot expect to be paid more and continue to remain an even remotely mediocre employee. You can also not expect to demand a large minimum wage increase and not have the probability that you lose your job and not go up as well. This is where a lesson in economics can be a pretty painful one, because like I said, you want a $15 minimum wage? Well, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And if you do get it, you should not be shocked one bit when your employer says, I can't afford any of this anymore, we're closing up shop. Because then you'll be making what I mentioned before, the real minimum wage, which is $0 an hour. But that is it for now. Please like and subscribe. It would be fantastic of you, and see you later.